Today is December 10th, 2014. We're at the 2014 Winter Simulation Conference in Savannah, Georgia. We're here to interview the pioneer Dr. Claude Dennis Pegden. My name is Robert G. Sargent. I will be doing the interviewing. This history video of Dr. Claude Dennis Pegden is being produced with funding from the National Science Foundation and will be placed in the Simulation Archive located at the North Carolina State University Libraries. Claude Dennis Pegden founded two simulation companies and led the development of various simulation software products. In 1982, Dr. Pegden founded Systems Modeling Corporation and served as its chief executive officer until the corporation was purchased in 2000. As CEO of Systems Modeling, Dennis led the development of the Simon simulation language, the cinema animation system, and the arena simulation system. In 2007, Dr. Pegden founded Simio LLC and is its CEO. As CEO of Simio LLC, Dennis led the development of the Simio simulation software system, which contains a family of products for modeling and simulating systems. Prior to founding Systems Modeling, he led the development of the SLAM simulation language. Dr. Pegden has authored or co-authored several books regarding simulation and simulation languages and various research publications. He was a program chairman for the 1984 Winter Simulation Conference. Dr. Pegden has received several awards, including the Outstanding Professional Contribution Award from the Institute of Industrial Engineers in 1980 and the Director's Award from the Winter Simulation Conference Board of Directors in 2003. Dennis, when and how were you introduced to simulation?
Well, my first introduction was a class I took at Purdue University from Alan Pritzker, and it was a simulation class. And at the time, my focus was in optimization, so I was doing a PhD in optimization. And I took this class. It was a popular class. A lot of people talked about Pritzker's class as a fun class to take. And I took the class and had a lot of fun doing it. And in the class I learned the gas programming language, simulation language. And that was my first introduction.
And who were the persons that in simulation that influenced you regarding becoming involved in simulation? Beyond just taking the course, but later you devoted your career to that. So who were the people that influenced you to do that?
Right. So when I graduated with my PhD, I took a job at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. And there was a guy there, Bob Shannon, who was the simulation person there. He had written a book in simulation, was well known in simulation. And he quickly started working on me about, boy, I should get more involved in simulation. And he taught the simulation class there, but he said, I'm going to have you teach the simulation class this time. And I was primarily focused on optimization teaching at that point. And so that was like a big shift for me. So I'd have to say Bob Shannon was the guy who moved me from optimization into simulation.
So tell us how the SLAM language came about, where SLAM stands for Simulation Language for Alternative Modeling, in the time period that this occurred.
So that was the class that Bob Shannon had me teach. And the University of Alabama in Huntsville was different than most universities because they didn't have an undergraduate program. All they had was a graduate program. So I walk into this class and there are, a dozen students. Half of them already have PhDs. For their jobs, they were doing simulation full-time for their jobs. They knew several tools. One guy in the class was a GPSS expert. Another one was a SimScript expert. And I'd had a class in GASP. That was my background in simulation. So this class was an intense learning experience for me. And what I quickly realized is there wasn't much I could teach these people, but they had a lot to teach me. And so it became kind of a team teaching effort. And so the SimScript expert, spent some time covering SimScript, and the GPS expert spent some time covering GPSS. And in the process, I was kind of lecturing about different ideas, the different approaches to simulation. And so the idea of trying to combine the discrete event approach focused on events and the process approach around, similar to GPSS, became an idea that I pursued. And so during that class, I developed SLAM.
Very interesting how you came about doing that language. Okay, so what is unique about the SLAM language? How did it differ from other simulation languages?
So at the time there was, event-oriented tools like GASP, and then there were process-oriented tools. And the thing that SLAM did was bring those together into one framework, so that you could start off with a process approach, but then when you needed events, you could jump into them at any time.
And what time period was this?
This was around 77, something like that.
Okay. So you and Alan Pritzker wrote a book on the SLAM language, and that described this language. So could you comment about this book and about how you developed the SLAM language? You mean you developed the SLAM language, so it had to be developed or written so you could develop the simulation language. So could you tell us about developing the language and writing the book, please?
Yeah, so the language development took place as part of this class. And a couple of my students were writing languages as well. It was kind of interesting from that standpoint. So at the end of that class, I wasn't sure what to do with it. And ended up, I sent a description of it to Alan Pritzker and said, here's something I've developed. And it was, based on some of the stuff in GASP, some of the similar concepts. And he got very interested in it and said, well, we'd like to distribute it and market it, and let's write a book together. And so we started writing that book together. And I made frequent visits to West Lafayette, and we spent, I don't know, maybe 6 to 12 months, the two of us, a lot of interaction on the book.
Was Alan still at on the faculty, or he had started Pritzker as an associate at the time?
Pritzker and Associates was in existence, and at the time they were marketing GASP 4. So SLAM became, the next product that they marketed.
Okay, so in this received the Lancaster, an honorable mention for the Lancaster Prize for this work.
Right.
Yes, and the Lancaster Prize is from where? Associated with organization?
That's the Orsa Timms.
Orsa Timms,
Yeah.
now known as Informs.
Right.
Yes, so you received the honorable mention there. So I was going to ask you, who are the persons that influenced the development of SLAM? I guess it was your class, the students in your class?
The students in my class were really pushed me a lot. They were super bright. And again, some of them, their full-time job was simulation using some tool, And so it was a unique opportunity as a young professor. And and Bob Shannon knew this. So,
I was going to ask you, was Bob Shannon involved with this development, or did you interact with him at all regarding the SLAM language? Or?
He wasn't directly involved in it from a technology standpoint. He was more involved as a cheerleader and enthusiast, and he was, very encouraging and, very mentoring, I would say.
That sounds like Bob.
Yeah.
Okay, you were on the faculty of the University of Alabama in Huntsville when you developed SLAM, as you just explained. But then in 1979, you joined the faculty of Penn State University. So what caused you to leave Huntsville to go to Penn State?
The short answer is Bill Biles. Professor Biles had been at Notre Dame and had tried to persuade me to come to Notre Dame. And they didn't have a PhD program, and I really liked working with PhD students. I found that to be,
Who didn't have a PhD program, Huntsville or Notre Dame?
Notre Dame.
Okay.
And when Bill moved from Notre Dame to Penn State,
As department chairman.
As department chairman, he gave me a call and said, "Why don't you just come up and look around?" And so I came up, and it was a whole different environment than Huntsville. You know, obviously a much bigger university, and I've always liked universities. There's been a thing about universities. I'll just be in a town, I want to go see the university. I just find them to be fun, interesting places. And Penn State was a fabulous place to visit, and I immediately fell in love with the campus. I like the idea of the larger faculty and of interaction with a lot more people.
Okay, so you basically recruited by Bill Biles.
Yes.
This is why you went there. What initiated you to establish the System Modeling Corporation in 1982 and develop the Simon simulation language?
Okay, so shortly after this, doing SLAM, I started trying to use it, and I ran into trouble right away. You know, there were things I wanted to model that I couldn't model very easily, and you know, it was SLAM. You know, looking back, it was interesting from the idea of combining things together, but I didn't have the modeling experience. Again, I was very new to simulation. To know all the features and capabilities you needed to really be able to model things that you encounter. And so as I tried to use SLAM, I got frustrated with some things. Well, if only I could do this, if only I could do that. So I decided to start over again, and started working on Simon. And it actually started, that's why I was still at University of Alabama in Huntsville, but just barely started. So I'd say 95% of this took place at Penn State. And so at Penn State, I put a lot of effort into working on this, and developed Simon to be a more useful and practical tool, built with a lot of the same ideas that were in SLAM, but just more robust, more complete.
So there's a company that was established in the development of the language. So the language started developing before you formed the company.
Oh yes, and the company. And the first thing I did was, after Simon was developed, I actually went back and sent a description of it and overview of it to Alan Pritzker, and to see if they wanted to market it. And they never really responded, so they acted like they weren't interested. And so systems modeling was formed because I didn't really have an outlet for. I wasn't looking to be in business, but the business kind of happened because it was a way of getting Simon out there to users.
Well, I remember visiting Penn State a couple times from Syracuse, and you were working with your students on developing, or a couple students developing the Simon language. I remember that during the time when I was down there, because we talked, and you were busy working on that Simon language.
Yeah, I taught a spatial topics class with like, you know, half a dozen students, where when Simon was first developed and kind of rough, and the students gave it a workout, you know, and criticized it and made suggestions on how to improve it.
So what do you think what was different about Simon language than about any other commercial languages available? Obviously you said it was more friendly respect to modeling than SLAM, but how did it differ from the others? There's certainly SynScript, there's other, you know, languages in the market at the time.
Right, so I would say it had the ease of use of tools like GPSS, that, you know, you could have a process orientation to modeling. And with Simon, you could stay in that process orientation most of the time. Like in SLAM, you could start with a process orientation, but you very quickly had to jump into events. In Simon, you could stay in that process orientation, but it was much more efficient from an execution standpoint. So the speed of execution was much faster. Also, it had the notion of separating experiment and model out. which made it easier to change things and play with variations of the model. So if you wanted to try different scenarios.
Yeah, sometimes people call that experimental framework.
Yes,
Ziegler does that.
the Ziegler stuff. And,
Yes.
and I had read, I don't know if it was Ziegler's paper or Ziegler's book, and that had a direct influence on that design.
Oh, very interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, yeah. That. Ziegler's book, first book was this fantastic book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who were the person or any person or people that influenced you to establish System Modeling Corporation? You indicated you couldn't market it, but the Pritzker people didn't seem to be interested in marketing it. So what influenced you besides trying to sell that? Was there other people that helped influence you to establish Systems Modeling Corporation?
My wife was probably the biggest influencer. She didn't have a job at the time. Right after we got married, we went to Tektronix, and I had a sabbatical. And at Tektronix, they paid my salary to Penn State and gave me an office and said I could work on anything I wanted. And at the time, Simon had been written. And while I was there, I wrote the first book on Simon.
And what year was this or time period?
So I'm lousy with years. This would have been 83?
Well, you established
82,
System Modeling in 82.
82. So this would have been 81 then. This would have been 81. And so that year was really spent, I did a bunch of projects building models at Tektronix using Simon, wrote the book at Simon, and my wife Lisa got interested in doing something with it. And when we came back from Tektronix, she didn't have a job, and in state colleges there aren't jobs. You're either a professor or you work at a bar or something, but there weren't other jobs for engineers.
So why don't you tell us a little bit, what's Lisa's background? She must...
So she's an industrial engineer, and she also did a couple classes in the business school. And she wanted to do it. So we started the business really in our garage. Literally, we had a garage we put a desk in. And, the intent was, I had no intent of leaving the university at that point. I love universities. I love teaching. It's always been my passion. And I said, okay, well, you can run this. So she would call me during the day and say, such and such customer called, and what should I tell them? So it started like that.
Well, very interesting. I didn't know that part. One other comment you made about the Simon language, that it was more computationally efficient in running than the SLAM language. And of course that was important in those days because computers weren't as fast as they are today. They didn't execute, so computation efficiency was...
Yes, and
it's important. I'm just trying to bring this up for history reasons. Yeah.
Right, and a big thing too was the IBM computer came out.
The PC, you mean?
The PC.
Yeah.
And Simon fit on it. And so having a simulation language available on, the personal computer that had come out, that was a big boost to Simon.
Was that the first simulation language put on a PC, or I think there's one other one, but I can't remember.
I think it might have been the first. Joe Talavich then developed one at Purdue, written in Forth, that was put on the PC. But I think we beat him. I think we were there first.
Yeah, that would be a huge... I never realized that, yes.
I mean, at the time Simon was developed, everything was about memory and speed and trying to squeeze every little piece out of...
Yeah, technology was very different. Yeah.
Very different, yeah.
Yes. So what was the business environment like for a simulation company like Systems Modeling? You have competitors in some sense, but then you had to establish it. So do you have any comment about the environment?
Systems modeling was more of a hobby at the beginning than a real business. My passion, my intent was to always be in the university environment. And it was kind of like, okay, well, we'll start this company. But the company started growing, and a lot of demands, and then started hiring. And of course, that changed the whole complexion of the business.
So you established the company in 82, so you left Penn State in 87 to run the company, to run systems modeling. So how many employees did you have in 87? Do you remember?
Probably 20. And there wasn't a date where I left. It was kind of like a transition. I was trying to be focused on teaching and graduate students, and then there was this thing over here growing that kept sucking time away. So I would go from full-time professor to half-time. Then I went to teaching one course a year, to finally then, saying, well, gee, there's too many people here depending on me. I've got to, cut the cord and actually devote time to it.
Well, so your decision really was forced by the business to leave.
Right. So I mean, when it got to be 20 people or so, it just got more complicated.
Okay, I didn't realize you had this phase out. Yeah. So you have your company running with 20 people or so, selling Simon language, but then you proceeded to develop the cinema animation system. So please tell us why you did that and what was special about it and the time frame if you could.
Okay, so back when it was just Simon, simulation was you'd run it and you'd see results or you'd get a trace, but there was nothing to look at graphically. There was a company out of the UK that came out with a product, I think it was called CY.
That's correct, yes, as I remember it.
And they had taken a terminal that had just characters on it and did a very rough, crude simulation animation with just character graphics. So you could move a character around the screen, but you had to put it at a character location. So it was very crude. At the time, there were these new graphics cards coming out that would let you do graphics on a screen. And so we decided it would be fun to try to develop an animation system that we could actually, be at the pixel level and make for nicer animations. So we started working on cinema. And the big deal there was getting a graphics card on the PC that would give high enough resolution to be able to do real graphics. And we kept traveling around talking to people working on these cards. We finally narrowed in on a company in Boston called Number 9 that made a card called the Number 9 card. And they had a card that worked where you could do graphics on a big screen out of a PC. The problem was they kept telling us we were going to get it next week, and that went on for about a year. But it finally came, the cards finally came, and we developed this animation system that tied into Simon, where you could draw a animation that would be driven from Simon running and be able to animate the models.
In what time period was this, please?
Cinema was probably 86 or something like that, 85, 86.
Very interesting. So what was unique about being the CEO of systems modeling?
I think systems modeling was not like a typical business. It was mostly focused on the aspect of the technology, trying to create new stuff. It was almost like we had a guy who was head of our sales who was very frustrated with the rest of the company. He said, this is like a technology club. It's not like a business, And so it was fun from that standpoint. There were things I missed from the university were partially replaced by some of the activities that took place at systems modeling, because we were trying to do research and development of new ideas. Another thing I found immensely fun about it was the international aspects. Probably more than half of our users were from other countries, and we built up this network of partners from all around the world. And so the opportunity to meet and get to know people involved in simulation from all over the globe. Was a very interesting part of it.
Well, and while you're CEO, you continue to develop new products, and you also developed the Arena simulation system after Simina. So could you tell us about that product and what was unique about it, please?
Okay, so Arena was basically merging together Simon and Cinema in a Windows environment. So Microsoft had come out with Windows, which was a much easier way to interact with the PC, and so we basically redeveloped Cinema under the Windows environment and integrated Simon as part of it, and so that became Arena.
And that became your main product eventually.
That became our main product, yes.
So, okay. So in the year 2000, Systems Modeling Corporation was purchased by Rockwell Animation. So please tell us about the currents of that. And also, could you tell us a little bit about the size of that System Modeling Corporation was at the time that they purchased it, please?
Okay, so Systems Modeling at that point, first of all, we had relocated from State College to Pittsburgh. And we moved 25 people when we moved. And then we grew to about 75 people, probably 65 of them in Pittsburgh. We had an office in Europe, in Amsterdam. And we were pretty established as a simulation product at that point in terms of Arena. And we started a second product called Tempo. And Tempo was a simulation product focused on factory scheduling. And Rockwell got interested in that product. And also Microsoft did as well, because Microsoft was getting into the ERP area. And so that's pretty much a month apart. We had both Microsoft and Rockwell contact us. Both wanting to buy half the company initially. They wanted to buy the Tempo part of the company. Mm. And the idea of splitting the company up like that, initially, I didn't know how that was going to all work and stuff. And then Rockwell saw Arena, and they liked Arena too. So then Rockwell changed from wanting just half the company to wanting the whole company. So at that point, the discussions got more serious with Rockwell as a suitor. And shortly after that, they decided to buy us, and we agreed to sell to them.
Okay. When you established System Model in 1982, you may have some vision of what you thought it might become. So how did your vision of 82 compare to what really occurred in 2000? Yeah, 18 years have gone by, yeah.
To be honest, I didn't have a grand vision. It was more, I've got this thing, Simon, Persico Associates, that they're not interested in it. Lisa's saying, well, I'll do it, I'll do all the day-to-day stuff, you can still be a professor. And without a grand vision, we stepped into the water. And then the currents took us from there.
So most companies need some financial support to get it underway, but since you started yours in your garage, did you have any financial issues getting the company established and going forward? I mean, we started the company with $5,000, and that's the only money that was ever put into the company, and the rest was all organic growth. So there was no capital influx of money. I think the company could have grown much faster, probably been more successful had we brought in some capital to grow it faster. But it just grew organically at a slow but steady pace. So could you comment if there's any major difficulties that occurred during developing and the growth of system modeling and how you might have overcome them?
Companies are a lot harder than I realized they were. There's all kinds of challenges that come up. We had periods of time where sales would be real slow, but you've got all these people on payroll. So it's a whole different environment than the university environment where you can just kind of think, you know. And I don't know if any one specific thing stands out as the biggest challenge, but I think just managing the finances in a way that you can continue to make payroll and not miss a paycheck for people.
So were there any, so why do you think System Modeling become a successful company?
The people. One nice thing about starting a company out of a university environment is you have all these students that you've had over the years that you know are amazing people because you had them in class. And so systems modeling started off with some employees that were former students. First one, Kevin Healy. And Kevin made huge contributions to Simon. He took over the code base and became the principal developer of it. Deb Sadowski, another student I had, amazing person, and you know, she just contributed intensely to the success of the company.
So were there any surprises that occurred with System Modeling to you as a company?
I'd say there are two surprises: is how intense it becomes and how consuming it becomes. You know, because I was determined I was going to stay at the university, but the force of a commercial business trying to make it succeed, and you can't do it halfway. You know, because if you do it halfway, it doesn't make it. So I would say how consuming it is and how much effort it is, but also how much fun it is. I underestimated how much fun it is. And I think part of the fun, again, came from the international aspects. I think it's much more fun to have a business where you're dealing with interesting ideas and interesting people from around the world.
So then in 2000, System Modeling became part of Rockwell, and you became the director of software for that company. So what did you do in that role as director of software for Rockwell?
Floundered. You know, it became very non-entrepreneurial at that point. You know, like they made decisions not to invest in development anymore. You know, take development offshore.
Was this development strictly for the products that you brought over, or was this broader beyond your original company?
I think beyond. I think, you know, Rockwell historically was a hardware company, and software was new to them. So this was a new culture, maybe, that was different than what they were used to, and maybe it didn't fit in that well. They also, like, they took systems modeling and they broke it into pieces, and they took, here's our support group, and they report to Cleveland because that's where support is, or whatever. And part of the magic of systems modeling before was everybody worked so closely together. If someone had a support issue, you know, the support person was talking to the development person who was right there, and they'd work it out together and figure out a solution. And so when it became stovepiped, you know, into different groups, I think it made it a lot less functional. And it's hard to watch.
So your baby tore apart, huh?
Yeah.
So you went with them in 2000, 2003, you left them.
Yes.
And then in 2007, you established your new company, Simeo. So what did you do in this time interval, 2003 to 2007?
I had a lot of fun. I did a lot of sailing, a lot of traveling. During that time, I had some ideas pop in my head about, you know, better approaches to simulation. And so eventually I started pursuing and thinking about those more seriously.
And so then you proceeded to establish a new company. So please tell us about how you went about it, what motivated you to do that, and so forth.
Yeah, so I had this idea for, in essence, Slam and Simon were both combining processes and events. And this idea was to basically take it up one more notch and say, well, let's have objects sit on top of processes that sit on top of events, where objects are built from processes. And that idea kept coming back in my head. And so at some point, I started saying, well, let's prototype it and see what it would look like. So I started working on a prototype, and a prototype took me probably a year and a half or 2 years to write, something like that.
Was you doing this by yourself?
By myself. I would go up to a little room at the top of her house and spend 6 or 8 hours up there at a stretch and prototype.
And so what language were you writing this in? What computer language?
So I started off, I wasn't sure. At the time, Java was very popular. And Microsoft.NET was out, but was newer. And I really liked many of the ideas in .NET, but Java was just way more dominant. And so when I first started off, I did the very first part in both, just to get a sense of what it would be like to work in Java versus .NET. And then after doing that, I made a decision, well, I like .NET a lot better. And so from that point on, I carried it on in .NET.
So this similar simulation language, how does what you were doing differ from similar? And did you look at that? Were you aware of it? Did you study it,
I was totally aware of Simula from this class going back to University of Alabama in Huntsville. Because that was a comparative concept class, and Simula was a big part of that class. And to me, that is the greatest achievement in, for sure, simulation was Simula, and maybe even computer science. I think the ideas that were brought forth there, in terms of the whole object approach, inheritance, overriding, and all that kind of stuff, were really pioneering ideas.
So how did what you were doing compare to that?
So it was those ideas, but instead of implementing an object-oriented approach in a programming language, what I was doing was implementing an object-oriented approach in a simulation process-oriented tool. So instead of writing methods, like a method to execute, you could write a process. Excuse me.
That's okay.
Take a drink.
Take a swig of water. Yes.
And that distinction is important because a method can't span time. So a method executes at an instant in time, and when it's running, the simulated time can't move forward. But a process flow, like seize, delay, release, that kind of thing, it can span time. So you have a more powerful mechanism to write these objects. It's easier from a skill standpoint. You're just a modeler. You don't have to be a programmer. But then in this framework, we put in all the ideas of object-oriented. So you can have a process that you override. So you can subclass an object. It comes with a bunch of processes that describe its behavior, but you can say, well, I want to add some more processes to give it additional behavior, or I want to change its behavior by overriding certain processes. But the fact that you're able to do this at a process level as opposed to a programming level was the key piece of power that was being added here.
So you developed these concepts, you implemented a prototype, and then proceed how you then went from there to establishing your new company.
So the new company was formed by bringing together some former people from systems modeling. And one of the key ones was Dave Sturrock, who was in charge of the arena product for systems modeling. And Rockwell was basically forcing him to move to another state, and or he could leave. And so, rather than move, he didn't want to move to another state. So he left Rockwell and joined Simeo, along with, and the same thing was happening to the remaining developers, who were very talented, gifted people who understood simulation really well, and were being forced out from Rockwell, and moved right into Simeo. So they became the team, led by Dave, that took the prototype and productized it, and redid many parts of it, and added the 3D animation, and turned it into a product.
And so you now had a number of employees again, but you didn't have any income stream yet. So how did you get your company's finance?
Yeah, so this was a whole different deal, right? Because in the case of systems modeling, it didn't require finances really. This did, because it was a jump into employees. And so a number of the people in the company invested. I invested some money. Dave Strock invested some money. Rich Ritchie, who's the head of sales, invested money. And then we also had some angels from outside. And the angel funding, together with the funding that we put in, was the foundation of it. But it's you have so much money to start with, and you're burning it, and it's going down, and eventually it starts to turn up, and you just hope it turns up before it goes all the way down.
So is this a privately held company now between the angels and the employees?
Yes.
And maybe you won't share this information, but does employees control more of the cooperation percentage-wise, stock-wise, versus, or do the angels have major control of the cooperation?
Employees.
Employees have major share. So the employees then, the technical people sort of can control where the company's going technology-wise. So you proceeded to develop, so could you maybe expand upon the software you've been developing over the last few years? Your company now is about, what, 8 years old or so, and so maybe you could discuss, your software suite. You got several products that you have developed in the marketing, so maybe you could tell us about your products and the marketing of those.
Okay. One of the things about simulation that always bugged me was how infrequently it was used. So, a company would be putting in a new production line, or building a new hospital or whatever, and so simulation would get used, and then as soon as it's built, it would get put on the shelf, and then not used until the next major change was going to take place. And so one of the things I've always been interested in is trying to make simulation used more frequently on day-to-day operations. And so part of what Simeo was about, besides this object-oriented framework, was to have a tool that was focused not only on design aspects of a system, but also day-to-day operations. So that's been a major focus of our development, and the growth of the company has focused on that as a key area. And it changes the way that.
And so, what is this software? What is this scheduling software? What is this software that you're talking about in the data operation? What's it do? What's its objectives?
So it helps you make, instead of just long-range decisions like should I buy this piece of equipment or not, it helps you make short-range decisions like should I run overtime next month, or should I expedite the material that's coming in from my supplier. So more short-term, bit more business-focused decisions.
So is this using simulation or is this using some other kinds of operation research methods?
No, it's simulation, so, sorry.
Go ahead, take some water.
I just coughed.
You okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's still based on simulation, and going back to the days when we had Tempo as a scheduling tool and Arena as a simulation tool, the idea here was don't have two tools. Have one thing that can work in both environments. So the same model that you build to design your facility, you just carry that same model over into day-to-day operations. So you've gone to all this trouble to build all, detailed model of your facility to capture all the logic. It's a shame not to use it then. So what we've done with Semio is build around the modeling framework all the infrastructure you need to tie that in to the data that needs to feed it on in a daily operation kind of point of view, and also be able to disseminate that information back out to the decision makers that need that output to make decisions.
So what's the size of your company today? How many employees roughly are you?
So we're about 15 people, so still pretty small. Small development team, and very agile, I would say.
So the company is now 8 years old. So how's the company today compared to what your vision was back when you were starting it up, you and the small group there?
Well, I would say I knew more what to expect this time. When we started systems modeling, I didn't really have a sense of what it was going to be like. This time it's kind of like the second time around. So I knew to expect it would be a huge amount of work. And so it's not radically different than I expected. And again, the people are the same people. So that makes it a much smoother, easier process as well.
And so what is your current vision for your company?
Our vision is really to continue to enhance Semio to make it a powerful solution to bridge both the design and operation. And we know we have more work. There's continuous work that there's always ways to make that more successful and easier to happen. We have tons of feedback from our customers of you should be doing this, and we agree. And so the list of work to make it better is long.
So how did computer technology, the change in computer technology, affect your new system? Because back in the early days with the system modeling, you had to be concerned, as we discussed, with storage, speed of computation. Today we have much different hardware, software. So how does that affect your software?
It's dramatically different. Back when we were systems modeling, we would have a release like every year. And it was a big deal to do a release, lots of manual testing. And our productivity compared to now, dramatically different. We're way more productive now. Now we have a release every 3 weeks. And we do in 3 weeks what we used to do, in a year. And the technology is a big part of that. Part of it is the software development process. We use this technique called Scrum, where you only plan out the next 3 weeks. You look at your backlog of things you want to work on and pick things to work on for the next 3 weeks. We have a completely automated test suite, which means every feature you put in, you spend as much time writing testing code as you do the feature. You know, at first this might sound like more work, and it is more work initially, but at the end of the day it saves a huge amount of time. Because what happens is you can put new features in and know you didn't break the old features. And so every time someone checks, you know, a new feature set in, which happens, you know, multiple times a day, it runs an hour of test to make sure that everything still works. So that's made us extremely productive.
Okay, in your previous cooperation, you had struggled a little bit with getting computer graphics going. So how does the technology in computer graphics aid what you do today?
Oh, it's awesome, right? It's on a little notebook computer. You have all the graphics you need for, you know, amazing 3D. Also, you know, the .NET platform that we're on has made us very efficient. It's a great platform. Makes it very easy to add features in a very rapid pace. So we do with a very small staff, you know, more than what companies with big staffs do on older technology.
Okay, now one thing you mentioned that you really enjoyed about your previous company was the international aspect, customers, people, and so forth. So how does that fit into your new company? You still do the international. Could you comment on that aspect of it?
We're still doing that. The mc00488 is in multiple languages now. There are textbooks, several textbooks. I think we're in 8 languages in textbooks now. We have customers all around the world. And you know, some of the amazing projects I see done are in other countries by. One of the joys I get is seeing our tool used in meaningful ways. You know, seeing some big project done where there's important decisions being made, and they're using our tool as the basis of making these decisions. And you know, a number of these projects I've seen have been, you know, in other countries.
You're now CEO, so what's a typical day or week like in your life as CEO? The kind of work you may do. You know, I'm talking about you doing technical work, you're interacting, or you're all doing business side. Could you just describe, you know, what your work week is like?
You know, as a small entrepreneurial company, it's way different than regular business. Everybody does everything. And so, and it varies dramatically from day to day. So early on, I was doing a lot of programming. I was part of the development team. And, you know, I'd say 75% of my time was coding. I haven't coded in the last year or so, maybe 2 years. So that's kind of phased away. I'll do a lot of prototyping of ideas. So you know, I'm drawn to the development side, even though I'm not on the development team per se. So I like ideas, and I like trying ideas out and prototyping them. So I'll do that. And then, you know, there's the business side as well that has to be spent. So some weeks it'll be all about, you know, the business side, and other weeks it will be all about some product side. You know, so it varies a lot.
So you enjoy this variability of
Yeah,
work?
it makes work interesting, and you know, the opportunity to work with such bright people makes it a special place too.
Now, you authored or co-authored several books on simulation language. You sort of alluded you had to have multiple languages there. So could you comment on you author, your writing of books and so forth? Would you like to comment on that?
Sure. I'm not a natural writer. Like, you know, some people can sit down and just naturally write, and I'm not that. And I think the books that I've been involved with have been, we need a book, it's got to be written, so let's sit down and make myself write. So, for example, I'm not part of the Semio book, and I'm happy that I'm not, you know, because again, I'd rather be working on ideas than writing. But writing is a necessity to get those ideas down.
Early on, though, you had to write your books. Yeah.
Yes. So the first book was the Slam book, then the Simon book, then the Arena book.
Now let's switch gears a little bit. You've done some publications, more so we say scholarly publications or ideas. That's not just implementing products. So would you like to comment on any specific research areas or topics or papers that you? Oh, I really enjoyed that paper. So would you comment a little bit on your research that you've done? We know you started out in optimization, but you may have loved something there. But I'm just trying to get some feel of your scholarly side.
Yeah, I think as a scholar, one of my problems is I like everything. So if I'd be teaching the stochastics class, and I'd get off on that, and then write a paper in queuing. My research has been very scattered, I would say. So some in optimization, some in simulation, some in queuing, even some in computational methods, and pretty varied.
So is there any specific ones that you really love, or you love them all?
I think I'd say I love that I've had the opportunity to have the variety. That there's not there's not like one paper that I can say, oh, this is my shining paper,
or one topic area. So when we do scholarly research we usually try to get money from different organizations to support your work. So could you comment on the organization that might have supported your research over the years?
The biggest one at a really critical time was Tektronix, because they paid my salary for a year, actually paid my wife's salary for a year as well, because I said, well, no, I can't come because I'm married and she'd have nothing to do. They said, well, we'll give her a job too. So they really helped to finance the final phase of the whole Simon language and bring that to reality, including the book. Most of my other things have been, industry projects that were financed by industry. I haven't had, any significant funding from NSF or projects like that.
Okay. Who are the person or persons that most influence your simulation work?
In terms of people that I've met and
just in general. We can talk about the people you met or read, or that if you look at you developed a lot of ideas in simulation and developed new languages and so forth. But I just wonder if there's any, 1, 2, 3, 4 people that that really influenced what you did.
Well, in terms of people that I had direct interaction with, obviously the start was taking the class from Alan Pritzker at Purdue and just being introduced to what simulation is, and then obviously Bob Shannon in terms of pushing me from being an optimizer into the simulation world with and really becoming engaged in it. In terms of just research ideas and stuff, I really think that the great ideas of simulation languages all came about 50 years ago. With Simula and GPSS and SimScript, they really formed the basic ideas of the event approach to modeling, the process approach to modeling, and the object-oriented approach to modeling. So, those pioneers were really, key to bringing those ideas out. And in some sense, I think in the last 50 years, it's all been about how do we take those ideas and make them really work, and make them, blend them together, make them work in harmony together, and make them work for practitioners.
So is there any person that you didn't meet that you'd like to have met in the simulation field?
Probably Dahl Nagard in Simula. Because I think those were the really crucial ideas.
Who are the business people that influenced your career here and your companies? And
So there should have been some, and I think we've suffered by there hasn't. Again, it's not. I guess the short answer is I have friends in my town that are real businessmen, that will give me advice sometimes. But I think systems modeling started up as a startup entrepreneur kind of thing we didn't have a business plan or normal business processes in place. So I can't really pick a single person that was like guiding me from a business standpoint. It was more like this traversal through the mines and trying not to be blown up, getting some advice along the way from friends.
so do you have a business person running your company today, your Simeo?
Simeo today is really run by three of us. Myself, Dave Strzok, and Rich Ritchie. Dave manages all the product development, product support, services area. Rich Ritchie manages the sales and marketing, and I play in both of those areas and also try to work on new ideas.
And so somebody get paid. You must have somebody handling payroll, or is that outside source?
So we hire that out, payroll outside. We have a finance person, but that's really a part-time role.
Okay. Who are the people that had the most influence on you in your career?
In my career, I had a number of great professors when I was in graduate school. My major professor, Pete Peterson, had a big influence on me. I think the combination of the people I work with through the companies, and also many of our customers, and business partners. There are a lot of really bright, intelligent people that, from all those aspects, that I think I've gained a lot from.
Did you dream of owning and running a company when you were growing up or in college? Did you ever dream of doing that?
No.
Your dream was always to be a university professor?
Yeah, I've always just liked thinking about ideas and pursuing ideas. And I think, the university gives a unique environment for that. The thing it doesn't do, it doesn't really give a mechanism for scoring those ideas. Yeah, you get reviewed by other professors, but it's not like being scored like you are scored by customers. And customers give a score that's way more meaningful, because if they can actually use your stuff and solve real problems, and it makes their life better in some way,
It's interesting.
It's a more meaningful score.
You said you like to be, freedom to pursue ideas that comes through university life. So did this occur while you're growing up, or did your family environment growing up influence your thinking in this direction?
I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, so I wasn't my dad was a jeweler, and he asked me if I wanted to be a jeweler, and it wasn't for me. No.
Okay. You served as program chair for the 1984 Winter Simulation Conference. Could you comment on this experience?
First of all, I'd say Winter Simulation Conference, if you had to pick an influence on my career, Winter Simulation Conference has been a big influence on my career. Over a long period of time, all the different papers, presentations, and ideas that have been discussed here. And when I was program chair, it was, a pleasure to do. I'm not an organized person, so those kind of things are challenging for me. But I really enjoyed the involvement in the program and meeting all the people.
You have received several awards. Received the honorable mention for the Lancaster Prize that we discussed earlier. So let us discuss these. In 1980, you received 2 awards. First, let's discuss the Dow Outstanding Young Faculty Award. Could you please discuss what the award is and where you received it and so forth?
Yeah, the award was basically given because of the work with SLAM. That was right after it developed SLAM, and it was a big surprise to me.
Who gives it? Was it given by Huntsville? Or, I mean, where's it? I never heard of the Dow Award, so I just wonder where it comes from.
It's a national award, so it's not in Huntsville, but it's funded by the Dow company, and I had never heard of it before I received it either. But it's given for young faculty. I forget the exact rules. You have to be under a certain age or with a certain number of years after graduation.
Thank you. Also, in 1980, you received the Institute of Industrial Engineering Contribution Award. Could you comment on that, please?
Yeah, and again, I think it was driven by the work on SLAM, and I think Bob Shannon had something to do with that, I think.
So this is a professional award from the Institute
Yes,
of Industrial
right.
Engineering. They give that once a year, probably.
Right.
Yes. In 2002, you received an Outstanding Industrial Engineering Award from Purdue University. Please comment on that.
Yeah, that was a big surprise because I think of all the people that come out of the program, and I never expected to be selected as one, outstanding contribution from graduates from Purdue program. But that was a very nice award to receive.
It's like one a year or more than 1 year?
I think they select 3 or 4 a year, something like that.
Well, that's very nice, yes. And in 2003, you received the Director's Award from the Winter Simulation, this Board of Directors Award from the Winter Simulation Conference. So could you comment on that?
Yeah, that was a very special award to me because of, again, Winter Simulation Conference has been such a big part of my professional career. I feel like I've learned so much from the conference, and then to be honored by the Board of Directors, that was very special.
How do you see the change in technology affected the field of simulation?
I think it's going through dramatic changes, and all for the good. I think again one of the challenges of simulation has been getting more broad use of it. As you go over time, simulation has been made easier to use, and therefore more people have access to it, and that's the pattern that's going to continue into the future. I think the animation makes it much more interesting, much more fun, engaging for people, both students when they're learning simulation, but also management to be able to see their systems in operation. And I think the whole cloud-based stuff that's happening now as well, because at the end of the day, simulation is about running experiments, and the whole idea of being able to run a large number of experiments very quickly. In some sense, the simulation is the perfect application for cloud, because you got lots of computation to be done. It can be done in parallel by spreading replications across processors, and so all of a sudden experimentation becomes less of a challenge in simulation.
Do you think you'll get involved working with the cloud?
We are. We have a version of Simio now that is all geared towards that. So if you have a bunch of scenarios you need to run and you want to get them back quickly, you can run them across many processors at the same time and get back in the time it would normally make them make one replication. Get an entire experiment run.
What do you think your legacy is going to be?
just, somebody focused on trying to build tools for practitioners. And I think I've tried to kind of bridge the gap between academia and practice, and try to bring ideas that professors develop into the products, as soon as possible. And we've gotten better at that here recently. We've been adding some of Barry Nelson's work to our product, and the time span from when people think up ideas to when it is available to a practitioner, that's getting shorter and shorter.
Now, you talked in our conversation today about your high interest in being a university professor. So do you see yourself ever going back to the university?
I think teaching classes, I'd like to do that again. Before starting Simeo, I thought, well, maybe I should, go back to university. It's, I know how hard it is to be both involved in the company and in university at the same time and doing it well. I learned that lesson already. So, but as I get more time to be able to be free from being, totally immersed in Simeo, being able to teach classes in simulation, and I also love working on research projects with students. So.
I was going to say, you do some teaching now in that company, but it's a different role, I guess.
Right.
And that's the role you love, is the interaction with the students.
Right.
Over time, yeah.
Right.
Okay. What advice would you give to a student entering simulation today?
Well, first of all, I think it's a great field to enter. I think the great thing about it is it's got application in so many areas. So, you're picking an area that you can be focused in healthcare, manufacturing, supply chain, transportation. It cuts across so many areas. So, obviously, there's many dimensions to being good at it, and having a strong foundation in statistics and probability is, as well as even things like finance and costing and process logic. All those things come into play.
Are there any other items you would like to discuss that we have not covered today?
I'd like to thank you for doing this, and but otherwise I think we've covered everything.
Well, thank you very much for doing this history interview for the Simulation Archive.